Joining us, a man who is no stranger to the Observer, the man himself, political leader of the NTA, Mr. Gary Griffith. Pleasant good evening, sir.
Good evening to you and to your many listeners.
Yeah, your name just keeps coming up every time the Minister of National Security stands up in Parliament. At some given point, your name comes up. He made it quite clear that over 50 legally issued guns were either lost, missing, or stolen. Now, these reported firearms were all issued before 2018. So why not are we hearing anything about 2018 to 2021?
I'll tell you why. This Senator Paul Richards, it seemed like this was a tag team. So you're an independent senator. So Paul Richards, shame on you. You had nothing else to do but to ask a barrage of questions. It seemed like it was a choreographed interview between Paul Richards and Fitzgerald Hines. It reminded me so much of the conversations with the Prime Minister, when we recall that the Prime Minister had padded questions, and as soon as he asked the question, he just went on his phone and started reading out the answers. So, Paul Richards, shame on you, that you could have, with 100%, almost 100% of all the murders committed by firearm in the last few years, by illegal firearm, you did not see it fit to ask Fitzgerald Hines, what are you doing about the borders? What is the situation to prevent illegal weapons? How many illegal weapons have been seized? You decide to spend all your time, yet again, it was like if you had a PNM party card in your back pocket, Pablo Richards, asking a set of questions that made no sense. So the question he asked, which is what Hines wanted to answer in a choreographed manner, that fell flat, was Paul Richards having the audacity to ask about how many legal firearms have been lost or stolen or misplaced. And what he did conveniently, Paul Richards, I don't know if it is at the attending PNM meetings now, that you wanted to find out only, quite coincidentally, from 2018, not about anything before. So Paul Richards, shame on you on how you have operated. I want to expose your actions. Instead of dealing with the main issues of 100% of murders by illegal firearms, you spend all the time asking questions in the hope that this is exactly what Fitzgerald Hines wanted to answer.
And Gary, it gives that impression that the government seems to be more use the word obsessed with all of this illegal firearms talk, when in fact it gives the impression that they're on the sides of the criminals. I mean, we want to know, what are you doing about the illegal firearms? We want to know how many are out there.
That is the point. So Paul Richards sounded more like a PNM senator than anything else today, because all he wanted to do is to ask the same road march that the PNM have tried for 4 years. The audacity of Fitzgerald Hines, you are pathetic. That after 4 years, you had Stanley Joki John, a retired judge who had absolutely no training, qualification, or experience in investigations. You hire him to be a detective, so all of a sudden he's like James Bond. He goes in there, makes a fool of himself by stating it was a massive, well-oiled criminal industry. And Hines has the audacity to keep quoting this joker. And after 4 years, not one person charged, not one person arrested, not one person, the only person held was a firearm dealer in Barbados that only a senior minister could have given approval for the police to have broken that law. And I assure you, as soon as the government change, are going to expose that, and that minister should be charged. So Hines decided to say 56. So let me clarify that to the public. No firearm that was issued under my watch was lost, stolen, or used for a crime. So that Paul Richards decided to ask about, that involved commissioners before me, which obviously, if it is that they had a bad system for issuing firearms, giving it to the wrong persons, that is their problem. That is what they did. So even though I issued more, my process was so stringent, I ensured that the right persons received it. And furthermore, out of that 56, at least 1/4, I think, would have been for law enforcement officials misplacing or losing it. And then out of that 40 odd, I think the majority would have been law enforcement officials who had FULs or security officers who have FUECs. So and then the few that would have been lost by civilians would have been somebody on, when it is that 3 or 4 men come with an automatic rifle and you have a sidearm. What are you to do? So the audacity of Paul Richards and Hines tag teaming like if it was WWF. to try to fool the country into believing, wow, 56 weapons were lost since 2018. None were lost under those that I issued. And then Hines came with the audacity again now to attack firearm dealers to say that there must be a stringent process. There wasn't one before. And he continues to state about a certain dealer where he didn't have the documents required. Why don't you call the name? Stop being a coward. You keep mentioning the fact as if it is that a firearm dealer did not receive this dealership and he should not have. Well, then call his name. Call the name and say exactly what was missing. And possibly charge him if it is he did anything wrong. But that is what the PNM do, lie and mislead the country.
Because basically they're saying that this country's commissioner of police between the period of 2018 to 2020 granted 11 firearm dealers permission to operate. And Himes, of course, claimed that there was insufficient oversight regarding the administration of the licenses. He said there were no professional and security considerations.
Yeah, he's a liar because we had 14 new policies implemented to ensure we had a proper process for firearms. That is why, listen to Trinidad and Tobago, so all the firearms that were issued by me on my watch, none were lost, stolen, or used for a crime. It showed the process. We also formed a compliant unit to ensure that there would be proper due diligence to ensure that those persons who received the dealership were the persons who had the capability. So by stating, oh, there's a 37% increase, that is because you had commissioners of police that probably wanted to have an elite select number of firearm dealers to make sure there could have been a monopoly. So by me expanding it to make sure that firearm dealers would not try to virtually blackmail firearm holders and sell a firearm for 10,000 when it should have been 3 or 4, you expand the market. And that is what they didn't want. It seems that Hines is hurt that certain dealers that were there before had a great monopoly. And again, going back to the point, if it is you had all of the concerns about these dealers, why is it that your prime minister harassed me to give a recommendation for a firearm dealer to get his firearm dealership to sell hundreds of more firearms in Tobago? So if it is you're criticizing Keith Rowley for having the audacity for me to have more firearm dealers get dealership.
Yeah, and of course, if you look at what the Commissioner of Police, Earl Christopher Haywood, has reported, that 100 legal firearms were used to commit crimes.
And again, that is a lie. I challenge her to show that what it is she is doing in a mischievous and incompetent way is boxing in all the issues pertaining to criminal investigations with legal firearms. So let me explain. She did it over the last 10 years. So there have been, I think it's about 15 to 20,000 crimes a year. So you're talking about out of 200,000, there were 100 issues involving legal firearms, out of 200,000. And in that 100, she included the same number of law enforcement officers, police, fire, prison officers, defense force, who lost their firearms, who had negligent discharges, private security officers who lost their firearms, law-abiding citizens who used their legal firearm to fire to protect themselves. That is part now of a criminal investigation. So she used it. Have you all ever recalled of a legal firearm being used for a crime in the last 10 years? Probably once or twice by sometimes a husband or something who may have used it. So the lie of trying to say, well, 100 legal firearms were used to commit crimes, they are liars. And that is why when I continue to expose them, notice they could never come and say, listen, Gary, look, we can show you here. This person, and call the names of the 100 persons. They can't. They are lying. They are using the same thing of police officers and soldiers who misplaced or lost their firearms, soldiers and police officers who had negligent discharges, which is a lot, by the way, that happens on a regular basis in police stations and in army barracks, and also law-abiding citizens who use their firearms to defend themselves. And what she said is there have been 100 matters involving legal firearms that are part of criminal investigations. She never said 100 legal firearms have been used to commit crime, but they know how to swing wrong words. So that is the audacity of Fitzgerald Hines, where he can, and again, speaking about more firearm dealers got dealership in that period. Of course, because you and your incompetence and the commissioners before, because they were inefficient, did not do what was required, which is why we got the backlog of 25,000. But Keith Rowley and Hines continued to lie to the country to say that everybody will get a firearm. 25,000 people applied. I only issued 1,000 a year to civilians, 3,000, which is 0.3% of the population. Had I continued on that process of 2,000 a a year, which is 1,000 to civilians and 1,000 to law enforcement, it would have taken 12 to 13 years to clean up the backlog of the 25,000 applicants. And that is what they see. Rowley also misled the country by stating 67,000 firearms came into the country. If 2,000 firearms were being issued annually, it meant it would have taken over 35 years to have those firearms sold. Which firearm dealer will bring in firearms to have it sold 35 years from now? That is how they lie. That's how they mislead the country. And that is how all you have to see Trinidad and Tobago. How many people have been arrested for corruption of firearms? How many firearm dealers have been arrested for improper behavior or bad or improper use as a dealer? Why have you taken back their dealership? Because you know you can't do that. The court is the one thing that the PNM has not been able to control.
Yeah, but Gary, as it stands now, the murder toll is 186 for the year. Why does this government have a problem with people having at least a fighting chance against these criminal elements?
Honestly, Kay, I think there's a deliberate cover by this government to protect criminal elements, and I'll tell you why. When it is that I spoke about turning persons with automatic weapons to be labeled as terrorists so that they will get incarcerated for 25 years, no bail. Those who bring in those weapons will also. Keith Rowley panicked. It seemed that he was, oh my God, how you could do that to these criminals. Then, when it says I was providing firearms to protect law-abiding citizens because of the state's incompetence and inability to protect the citizens, they are upset. And all that they continue to do is to be upset with law-abiding citizens getting firearms to defend themselves. But it's okay, because a senior Minister of National Security harassed me to get 12 firearms for his friends. Another senior official, it was about a dozen. They had a senior government official harass me to get a certain firearm to kill his pigs. He has another one that with 500 rounds. So if you have to give out 12 firearms for each minister or senior government official, that is roughly 600 firearms a year just to the elite ministers and senators and senior persons in the PNM. And I was giving out 1,000. So what the PNM is stating is that give out the 600 to our rich and famous friends that are close to ministers, and the other 400 share that out between the 1.4 million people. That, I ask anybody in the PNM, how could you accept such total stupidity?
Gary, any closing comments, Gary? Go right ahead.
No, I just want to quickly tell the country that, listen, you wanted the opportunity to have a fighting chance to the small businessmen, to the farmers, to the persons who are involved in sport with firearms, to the soldiers, the sailors, the fire officers, the prison officers. If you want that fighting chance to have a weapon to protect you, to protect your family, to those 20,000 protective services members, you will not get a firearm issued to protect your family under this government because it seems that they're afraid that the criminals could be shot at. We will provide that for you when the government changes. And we will peg back the criminals. And I assure you, though, we will balance the scales of justice will be balanced to ensure that we will win this war against crime.
Thank you so much, Gary. Keep up the good work. Best of luck to you and your entire team. Thank you so much.